Imagine you are walking through the new heavy containment for the first time, once 14.0 public beta releases. You hear the sound of the fan brushing the air above. The chugging of the blades heightens what you hear, bringing attention to the smallest of sounds. As the soundscape quiets, and the noise in your head is replaced by thoughts of what to do next, you relax yourself. Find a researcher's card, get to a containment chamber, and the horror genre is no stranger to the complexities of sound design. As years of game development have progressed and advanced, so have the tools and techniques needed to achieve the most immersive audio in video games. Starting with 1972's rudimentary attempt at what is considered to be the first horror game ever created, aptly named it Haunted House. The audio design lacked the modern nuance that developers struggle with today, only relying on a few simple modulations and jingles rather than actual sounds, with loud and annoying clicks to signify the movement of the playable character. However, something interesting of note that applies to the subject of today's video is the combination of fear in this game's sound. Whenever a monster nears the playable character, the sound of static distortion can be heard fading in as it draws closer. This simple feature goes a long way, showing that even in the early days of game development, sound design was still an important aspect that the programmers considered when trying to create a scarier atmosphere. While nothing special for today's standards, it is an awesome preservation that shows how good audio and good horror go hand in hand with one another, and how even with limited resources, developers attempted to use this to their advantage to make good games. I could definitely imagine playing this as a young kid in the early 80s, never having touched a video game prior, as they weren't a definitive part of entertainment at the time, and being absolutely terrified of the screeching noises the monsters made when they drew near. Now, years have passed and the nuances of audio design have set in. Horror games like the original Silent Hill 2 have taken media by storm, displaying revolutionary graphics while using dreamy and atmospheric sound design to back the gameplay. That game is one of the many examples in how the audio of a horror game completes it, and grants unique identities that can set a game apart from others as a reward for the effort put into its sound.
Where is that girl?
Enter the early 2010s. Wiki horror such as creepypastas like Slenderman and Jeff the Killer have taken the world by storm, while in the darker corners of the internet, a unique world brewed, the SCP Wiki. From that, it birthed what is now considered one of the most iconic indie horror games of the internet. On April 15, 2012, SCP Containment Breach would fall into the internet, letting players experience the unique world of the SCP universe with their boots on the ground and knee-deep in the middle of a containment breach. You play as a Class D, held prisoner in an SCP Foundation facility as a punishment for crimes you don't even remember. When things go awry in the facility and the monsters below start breaking out, you need to find your way through the maze-like halls and escape. Now, by itself the gameplay is fun, engaging and scary, but nothing would properly convey the horrific event that is a containment breach without the proper audio design. Proper doesn't always mean unique, and it is apparent that quite a few sounds in Containment Breach are pulled from existing pieces of media and other royalty-free libraries. This sound effect, for example, is just a muffled piece of dialogue from Battlefield 3's iconic mission, Rock in a Hard Place, mixed with sounds of a brutal gunfight.
He's doubling back. Holy fucking shit! Hit the gun!
Many examples of this can be seen throughout the audio files in the game. and while it shows a lack of proper resources, it does not reflect any sort of bad sound design. Instead, the game's audio feels fresh, mixed well, and achieves the goal of displaying the true chaos that is a breach of containment. From the moment the breach starts, the overlapping distress of the entire facility is made clear, with the sounds of screams and destruction filling the air. While made up of plenty of different sounds from plenty of differing media, the mixing and themes of these sounds are meant to display a clear knowledge of how sound design and horror go together, and provide insight on the talent the developers have. Despite the small team that it made, SCP Containment Breach sits atop internet horror as the game that popularized the SCP Wiki to a whole new level, and in no small part due to the mastercraft of the atmosphere and setting it provided. Despite doing so well, however, there is one thing that should be said about the noises. A lot of the sound design is just ambience, noises with no real-world origin, disembodied and of no effect to the player. The proper term for this would be a red herring, but we will touch up more on these red herrings later. The presence of these can be excused as it was always meant to be a single-player horror experience. In the months that follow the release of Containment Breach, the SCP Foundation fandom had skyrocketed in terms of popularity, and thanks to the success of that game, many new projects began to be developed that attempted to capture the core of SCP-CB. One subject of this popularity was surprisingly a Gmod game mode, simply named Breach. In this game mode, you attempted to escape the SCP facility in similar fashion to that of SCP Containment Breach, but with a twist. It was all multiplayer. Now you had the ability to play as a collection of different roles within the Foundation, previously inaccessible in the original game, such as researchers, guards, and even SCP subjects. The game mode was quite popular when it was first released, and its impact would forever change the SCP fandom as it inspired one up-and-coming developer, Hubert Mocka, a Polish teenager who was a fan of Containment Breach and the Gmod game mode in particular, had decided to start developing a project meant to replicate the Breach game mode. But in the game engine Unity, as a novice in development and starting off mainly solo, Hubert pulled a lot of assets directly from the original Containment Breach, making the necessary changes for them to work slightly better in a multiplayer setting. If you want to see more of this progression, check out my hour-long video on the history of SCP Secret Laboratory. With these assets, followed by the inclusion of most audio from the original game, things like the sounds of doors, footsteps, intercom, and music had all been ported directly and made the ambience similar to that of Containment Breach. With the game being in a playable state and simple proximity chat, the game got big at a decent pace. Some contributing factors to this were the countless videos of funny clips of people running around and screaming helplessly while being chased around the corridors of the facility. This was enough to entice people to play, and since then, the game has only gotten better in terms of visuals and gameplay. One thing that has stayed mostly stagnant, however, with only a small amount of notable exceptions, has been the sound design of the game. Some may even argue that the sounds, or at least the atmosphere fitting the sounds, has downgraded over time. While that is somewhat subjective, what is fact is that the sound design has had changes, few and far between, with some small additions in recent times. Additions such as SCP-106's breathing, SCP-049's ability theme, and doors are notable changes. But the soundscapes of the facility has changed very little. This has left a lot to be desired, especially if we consider the fact that the old chase themes from Containment Breach were actually present in SCP Secret Legumatory, before being suddenly removed to help towards the effort of moving away from Containment Breach. In no way is the intention of doing so wrong, but the fact that there has not been any suitable replacements aside from SCP-173 and SCP-049 themes, which were added years apart, left some fans disgruntled. It is fair to be upset as well. A large part of a horror game is setting the mood. For an adrenaline-filled chase to be completely devoid of music in a game where it has been proven to work previously can feel like a bit of a letdown. Update after update, the sound system of the game has stayed relatively the same, with no sign of it changing anytime soon. It can be argued that with the visual and gameplay enhancements taking center stage, the sound of the game have taken a backseat to most things, even with new additions and other miscellaneous things. The sound design seems off, to put it at best. Grenades can only be heard from 2 hallways away, and gunshots lack any sort of punch and can't be heard past a few hallways either. The voice chat has also stayed mostly the same, maybe better optimization, but it is identical to how it has been for the past 7 years when seen at face value. This is quite a concern, especially given the fact that the potential of SCP-SL's voice chat system has been shown off in an exclusive beta for Update 12.0, where the proximity chat system actually had a level of physics behind it.
Hello? Oh. Hey there, buddy. Hello? What did I just hear? Oh, nah.
While an incredible feature that players would kill to see nowadays, it was ultimately cut due to performance issues, and never making it to a full build of the game. Knowing this definitely is a bummer, as in post-Lethal Company world, the potential of voice chat physics has no end to the funny and horrifying moments that the game could have. Even in the new heavy containment zone, the facility lacks any real noise. Aside from some fans, the zone is quiet. And don't get me started on the quote-unquote blaring alarms that can't be heard past the rooms they're in despite being surrounded by completely open halls. The facility's background noise is almost completely composed of musical ambience. This is incredibly apparent if you apply the scanned status effect to yourself when in a private server. Devoid of sound, aside from the few ambiences that are from Containment Breach, the only other thing that can be heard is the weird, incredibly loud server rack emanating from the Alpha Warhead silo. Don't believe me? Here. While that is an issue which will most likely be addressed with the Nukeroom rework in 14.0, it highlights a lack of proper care for the current sound design of the game, and by proxy, a large chunk of the atmosphere. Also, remember those Containment Breach ambiences I mentioned earlier? Those are the examples of red herrings, as they are sound with no origin or purpose, meant to fill large gaps in the quiet sections of gameplay. The issue is that these sounds directly conflict with moving away from using Containment Breach assets, and also pulls from a very small library which becomes easy to discern after only a few rounds. This creates needless noise that can be irritating to hear repeatedly, and also serves to completely fly past any experienced players who have mentally blocked it out. Now, despite all of the current issues, it is safe to say Northwood has a desire to improve every aspect of the game, including the sound design. So instead of sitting here and talking bad about the current issues, I wanted to give some potentially interesting solutions. An immediate thought that comes to mind when thinking of how to improve the soundscape of a game is of course Fmod. Fmod is an audio middleware that allows more complex sounds to be changed using simple parameters, and allows for things like proper sound physics to be added. It also makes things easier on the development side of things, allowing sound changes to be made live in the build so designers can get things sounding just right. I know, if you are a regular in the SL community, you are probably rolling your eyes at the fact that I am the 1,000,000th person to mention Fmod being added to the game. Good news is, it's already being worked on, or at least planned out to some degree, so I don't really need to touch up on it any more than I have. What I do want to do, however, is to make an example out of the game that I believe has some of the best sound design, that inadvertently transfers the game into something near horror, a game you may not expect. DayZ, put simply, is a realistic zombie survival game set in the post-Soviet region of South Zagoria. You adventure across the map, looting and surviving. In the game, you end up doing things like maintaining your temperature and hunger while also fending off the undead, as well as other survivors. With the basic description of gameplay aside, let's take a look at how the execution establishes the atmosphere of the game and see how that could be translated into SCP's secret laboratory. Say you were in the woods, walking around or cooking some food around the fire. The first thing you'll hear are the sounds of birds, leaves, and trees. It's quiet enough to not block out the ability to hear footsteps or other important sounds, but loud enough to fill the noise in your head. Small red herrings are immersed into the atmosphere itself, as trees sometimes bend and creak in the wind loudly, possibly causing you to jump at the break in the consistency of the soundscape. You wander around, taking in the serene sounds when suddenly a couple of gunshots in the distance, far enough to where you feel somewhat secure, but enough information to tell you that someone is nearby. letting you know that despite being in a desolate world, you are not alone. Who they are and what they are shooting at is unknown, but they're out there. Now the tension in the air has risen, and you have to plan what you do next accordingly, with the knowledge that someone out there, something has happened that does not revolve around you. Now let's try and translate this into something theoretical for SCP-SL. Say you are a Class D sneaking around the new heavy containment zone, post 14.0. You walk through a tight corner past some boxes, hearing the lights above you constantly hum as the pipes in the wall slosh liquids quietly. All these constant sounds surround you, making the facility feel alive. You take a look at a keycard on some box, reaching out to pick it up when... Was that a grenade? Why was it set off? To open a door? Is someone fighting an SCP? Or was it a guard? Whatever happening is far, but close enough to be heard. With only so many routes to take, you have to plan accordingly based on what you heard. While the concept of hearing grenades and guns from further distances away may bring the challenges of gameplay balance, I can't see them not having positives that outweigh the negatives. Not only is it a good addition in terms of creating a much more realistic, scary, and desolate atmosphere, it also creates an interesting shift in the balance of a gunfight. Late game gunfights, where there are only a few Chaos Insurgency and Mobile Task Force left, will end quicker if they can hear each other's gunfights from further, or Class D deciding whether to shoot the guard in the back or not now has to debate the consequences of making so much noise. It will also bring better balancing to the suppressor item, since guns can't be heard from very far already, and suppressors are a little bit too quiet, almost to the point of being annoying. Introducing this will bring new and unique mindsets on how to deal with situations, which create a fresh experience for all players. Now let's look at a core part of the gameplay, the proximity voice chat, and see what other games do with its own. You might be going, oh, Lethal Company, right? No. In fact, I'm talking about 6 Days in Fallujah, which has an incredible proximity chat and radio system.
Down!
Alright, move, come on.
Alright,
I saw a man move on to the left here.
roger.
Alright. Alright, Nano, I'll go left, you go right. Yeah, thank you, Grant. That plan really worked out.
The audio is so
Also-
good though, that transition. Oh, I see guy! Taking fire, taking fire! Ah!
As you just saw, the sound has real physics to it, and unlike Lethal Company, which only fades and muffles your voice based on distance, 6 Days in Fallujah has a feature that causes your voice to carry further the louder it detects you speaking. Also, if you didn't notice, you can hear yourself talking as your own voice reverberates off of the walls. Imagine this kind of voice chat in SCP's secret laboratory. On top of everything previously mentioned, all of these features working in tandem would create some of the most intense atmosphere, while also enhancing the funnier moments of the game. With the aforementioned addition of Fmod, we could expect to see these features, or hopefully similar in the future. As said before, good sound design can lead to even better horror, and it is pretty well known that Northwood wishes to divulge further into the horror side of the game. I'm sure that in the future we will receive updates to aspects of the game like better proximity voice chat. As for other sounds to be reworked, I couldn't say, but hopefully there is an update in the future that reworks the sound system while also replaying the current sounds library that's full of Containment Breach assets. If you have any suggestions for any good ideas that could go with the sound design of the game, throw a comment below and let me know. I'm sure that one of these days, the horrific chaos that is a Containment Breach will be amplified by the improvements to the atmosphere and with the help of good audio design. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed and got to learn just exactly
Dlaczego generatory
SCP-079
nie działają? Bo ma wyjebane. RJ AAJ AJ 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 TAT AT TAT AT AT AG RRR